Hey everyone, let's jump right in. Have you ever opened a package you ordered online, stared at some bizarre kitchen gadget or, a pair of shoes you already own, and just thought, wait, why did I even buy this? You rip through the cape, tear away the bubble wrap, and find yourself holding an item you have literally zero memory of actually needing. Well, trust me, you are absolutely not alone in that feeling. Today, in this explainer, we're unpacking a really fascinating premise. Our modern digital shopping habits aren't just about convenience anymore. They're actually an engineered heist on our neurobiology. To really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of how we interact with our screens, we have to look at the massive foundation this whole system rests on. A staggering $151 billion. According to a recent report by the American Optometric Association, that's exactly how much unmanaged screen time symptoms cost Americans every single year. Let that sink in for a second. That isn't just measuring eye strain or lost productivity at work. It's a huge testament to the massive scale of our intense, totally uninterrupted engagement with digital interfaces. And that unbroken attention, that is the absolute bedrock of the biological heist. Because they already have our undivided attention, these platforms have built the perfect infrastructure to bypass our better judgment. We're glued to these screens and it's costing us big time.
So this brings us to the core mystery. Picture this. It's 11 p.m., the house is dead quiet, your face is lit up by the glow of your phone. You're mindlessly scrolling, and boom, you tap buy on something you didn't even know existed 5 minutes ago. Who is actually in control in that moment? Are you making a calculated, rational economic choice? Or are you just generating an automatic biological reflex that was intentionally programmed into that app by a highly skilled team of developers? Well, we actually have some hard science on this now. Groundbreaking research from the Journal of Emerging Trends and Novel Research put this exact late-night scenario to the test. They ran the numbers on how digital stimuli genuinely impact our brains, looking specifically at the intersection of dopamine, instant gratification, and our online buying behaviors. And honestly, their findings are incredibly validating. If you constantly find yourself struggling with online impulse buying, fighting that urge to add just one more thing to your cart, you aren't just lacking willpower, you're actually fighting against highly calibrated science. Okay, so here's what they found. They identified this fascinating biological phenomenon they call the prefrontal bypass. Think of your prefrontal cortex as your brain's extremely cautious financial advisor. It's the part of you responsible for logic, reason, and asking the tough questions like, hey, is this actually in our budget? It's your biological braking mechanism. But modern e-commerce uses low-latency transactions and dopamine-inducing interfaces that move with such blinding speed, they literally short-circuit that rational center. The interface totally outpaces your logical brain. The transaction is over before your internal financial advisor even wakes up to review the paperwork. Think about how we used to shop. For centuries, buying something inherently involved a massive amount of physical friction. You had to actually get off the couch, put on real clothes, sit in traffic, walk down endless aisles, and then physically stand in a checkout line behind someone slowly writing a paper check. Psychologists note that this annoyance was actually crucial. It acted as a mandatory cognitive cooling-off period. It gave your prefrontal cortex plenty of time to wake up and say, wait, do I actually want this? Contrast that with today's frictionless digital revolution. The time between seeing a product and buying it has shrunk to mere milliseconds. That essential cooling-off period, it's been entirely wiped out.
So, how do they pull off this prefrontal bypass? Well, platforms rely heavily on what are known as dark patterns, basically dopamine traps. I'm talking about the sudden anxiety of unexpected flash sales, the stress of those ticking countdown timers, the infinite scroll, push notifications, or that little red text aggressively warning you, only 2 items left. These aren't just annoying design choices. The research shows they systematically trigger our ancient brain's survival instincts. A countdown timer creates artificial panic, which initiates a powerful dopaminergic wanting phase in the brain. That massive dopamine spike you feel, it isn't actually from enjoying the product. It's from the intense primal anticipation of securing a limited resource right now before someone else snatches it.
But getting you all hyped up and panicked is really only half the heist. The other half? Making sure you don't snap out of it before you actually pay. The researchers surveyed a group of digital natives and found that a massive 75% of them prefer using saved wallets or UPI for payments. Now, why does this matter? Well, when you hand over physical cash, watching a crisp $100 bill literally leave your hand, your brain registers something called the pain of pain. It's a literal neurological discomfort that forces you to weigh the cost. But when you just double tap the side of your phone for Face ID, that psychological defense mechanism is fundamentally erased. The money just doesn't feel real because it's just pixels on a screen.
And it totally works. When those exact same respondents were asked if saved payment details led to faster transaction completion, the agreement was completely off the charts. They scored it a 4.27 out of 5. By getting rid of the technical hurdles of typing in a 16-digit credit card number, hunting down your expiration date, or putting in a billing address, the cognitive load is brought down to absolute zero. You don't have to think at all. The purchase goes from being an active, deliberate decision where you are the driver to an automatic, passive response where you're basically just a passenger on the checkout express.
Now, what's really interesting about this data is what happens right after that super-fast transaction completes. The correlation analysis reveals some incredibly telling relationships. There are moderate positive links between flash sales and unplanned purchases, as well as instant gratification and overspending. But look at that last relationship. There is a strong, positive correlation of 0.64 between transaction speed and post-purchase realization, otherwise known as buyer's remorse. This absolutely proves that because the checkout is so artificially fast, your prefrontal cortex only kicks in after the payment goes through. Basically, you buy at the speed of dopamine and you regret at the speed of logic. Which brings us to a really crucial realization. The researchers summed it up perfectly. Impulse buying is becoming a programmable biological reflex rather than a psychological flaw. Let that reframe the entire conversation for you. The narrative we so often tell ourselves is that we're just weak or that we lack self-control and discipline. But this research changes the whole game. You aren't intrinsically flawed. You are interacting with interfaces strategically engineered by incredibly smart people to exploit your specific neurochemistry.
But here's the catch. Willpower isn't something you can just conjure up on demand, especially if you're facing these triggers every single day. The data highlights how habituation, just getting used to it, plays a massive role. People who use algorithmically optimized shopping apps daily scored a perfect 5.0 out of 5 in susceptibility to instant gratification. Those who shopped weekly, they scored only half that, at a 2.5. Daily exposure literally doubles your vulnerability to the prefrontal bypass. It's exactly like a muscle getting completely fatigued. Your brain habituates to the constant flood of dopamine triggers, progressively wearing down your inhibitory control the more frequently you open the app.
All right, so how do we fight back? Knowing all this actually gives us incredible power to hack our own habits back. If e-commerce relies entirely on a lack of friction to bypass your brain, your best defense is to intentionally reintroduce what we call ethical friction. And you can do this right now. First, go into your favorite shopping apps and delete those saved credit card details. Second, turn off one-click or Face ID payment options entirely. Make yourself physically get up, walk across the room, find your physical wallet, and type those numbers in manually. Make it annoying to spend money again. And finally, enforce your own mandatory 24-hour cooling-off period for anything sitting in a digital cart. Give your prefrontal cortex the time it desperately needs to wake up and do its job.
Because the truth is, the digital marketplace isn't just a catalog anymore. It has evolved into an active biobehavioral stimulant. The technology is undeniably faster than our willpower, but it is not faster than our awareness. Once you see the strings, you don't have to be the puppet. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Will you continue to let an algorithm bypass your brain, or will you take back control and add the friction back into your life? Thanks for exploring this explainer with me today. Stay curious and stay in control.